If you really think about it, if you are an actual essence being, what the Gnostics called the pneumatic soul, you are an extremely powerful creator, an extremely powerful being of light. And that is why all these lengths have to be taken to keep you small, to keep you in a perceptual prison. The LOOSH farm is built on misidentification, on you thinking you are your body, your brain, your ego, separation. The little me caught in survival beast mode. Without this, there would be no matrix. Without this, there would be no endless war. There would be no ability to force you to be a financial slave. It's essential to the devil that you have the wrong idea of who you are. That you stay isolated, or conversely, in that puddle of people, in a puddle of lost souls, in a big city, or the commotion of a traffic jam, stuck in road rage, always worried about how are you going to survive. Where's the money going to come from? And if you have the money, how are you ever going to have a friend? Or if you think you have a friend and they're a cluster B monster, always walking on eggshells, or always worried about keeping your psycho monster fed and happy. It's very important to the system of the false self that we never actualize our potential, that we never recognize that we're more than a battery for the matrix, that we never even know the vast creative potential within us. The archons and this imposed fake reality need you stuck in the cage of false perception, because in many cases, and most often, it is mutually exclusive. Were you to know who you really are, or even a little bit of it, were you to have the discipline to become so good at a trade that you're able to take care of yourself in capitalism, or that you became so good at fishing, hunting, gardening, wildcrafting, that you would figure out how to take back your sovereignty, while in the physical sense, so that when you have killed your fish and eaten it, or milked your goats, when you have fed your belly, that you will have those hours and those extra days and those moments to create If you black pillars, you brutal truth tellers could accept the cannibalistic, cannibal carnival, the nasty aspect of this, that the devil, LOOSH 4, Inky, has hybridized us and forced us to need to consume other animals' cholesterol. If you can accept that your brain needs placenta or something with cholesterol, and you can get over whining about that, and you can get over being angry about the hybridized part of this fleshly existence that I don't think we can change, and focus in on actualization of the divinity. If we can learn how to get along with each other, to get a curve, to actualize full respect, respect, discern and look again, you can see that there's very important reasons why not only would a person like me get a seemingly incurable disease, or several of them, be coerced into codependency or thrown back into a family in the perceptual cage of the goyim that I have to be coerced into thinking that I need to, and that the guy I'm staying with needs to deliver food. And why does it have to be back to that original job? Is that why one of the reasons why I've been laying there physically sick in bed for days? Because no matter how far along into the lost problem of the cluster B pathology they are, deep, deep down inside, there is that possibility, there is that truth that we are affected by each other's energy, that when you touch someone's aura or live in their house, you do influence them. And I had several horrible dreams last night that reminded me of Michael L. Martin's idea that if this is a prison, then the dream time, the astral dimension or dream realm, is the prison yard. One was first one was I was flying and my bags were misplaced, and then I was trying to check into this anarchist or crazy rental in the city that was very slummy, full of people, and only to discover that the room I was checking in was a hostel room, when I had been given the impression that it was a tiny private room, and many strange details that would make no sense in this, but in the dream, where anything is possible, I found that I was crowded in by the lewd, rambunctious and creative and dirty and messy anarchist in this big city. Now, I love anarchists, and this kind of reminds me of a house on Goss Street over 20 years ago I would prepare food not bombs with, and how the people there perceived themselves as pansexuals. But secretly, there was this desire to have monogamy, to have fully flowering yin-yangs, hierogamy, heterosexual and homosexual couplings. But they felt like that was, wrong-headed, old-fashioned, and lame. So I'd go into that house and I could feel all the strings. And this situation I'm in now is the exact opposite. The isolation of the ego and the mental schism of this tendency in certain personality disorders that the Archon has to say, insist on strictly upon isolation. And some of that based in, the approximation of the individual as divine is actually based in respect for the need for space, the need to have that time alone, timey, to grow, to be the true self. But yes, it easily goes too far when the false self begins to, in that isolation, to mutate into the malignant pathology of I, me, mine, only me. In a healthy relationship with the essence, an individual who gives themselves lots of space away from others has, in this case, over half a decade ago, they learned to fix small appliances, to teach themselves a trade. So, the dreams I was in last night were the exact opposite of that. And it brings up how in the second bardo, all of us, unless you really do the serious inner work, if you watch really popular YouTube videos, for example, or let alone the mainstream media, movies, Hollywood, anything legacy media, anything on YouTube or Rumble that's popular, you're probably going to be crowded in with archontic ideas, with ideas that keep you stuck in fucking beast survival mode that crowd you in with a perception of littleness, of competition, of I've got to share this planet with everyone else, and we're just little ants that have to be matrix batteries, and we have to feed into the suffering and suffering and suffering and more extra misery and more extra pain. Or if you have a mental or physical illness or both, you have to stay alone. You have to stay stuck in perpetual loneliness and isolation and misery and that kind of suffering, when neither is true. And years ago I perceived in the age of Aquarius, if we were really an enlightened society, that each essence, each fleshly suit would have a proper amount of alone timey, alone space, a healthy amount of physical and mental space, because Aquarius governs over space, gadgetry. And if it was a real realm, not a hijacked LOOSH farm, pit of suffering, mental, psychological, and physical hell, the need that these things and the essence, the brain and the heart and the spirit needs for space would and will, after this greatest war of all is over, be honored. You wouldn't have to be forced to pay to live in a place that you were born. You wouldn't have to be dominated by a financial system made of black magic sorcery. You wouldn't have to be dominated by black magic sorcerers at all. They would be kicked out of power known to be vampires. Vampirism wouldn't be celebrated as cool, not only in Hollywood movies, but in our psyches, in our social lives. Socialism wouldn't be used to put the boot on you through groupthink as mind flunk, or through universal basic income, giving everyone money, giving everyone stuff to keep the little me little. We wouldn't be under an algorithm that forces us to compete for an audience and forces us to have this perception that we all have to battle each other for dominance and influence. And yeah, I like Joshua's soliloquies and his rants and monologues, but and he says some important things there, but I much prefer his comedy videos and art, and of course his live streams. And why are his live streams so great, or potentially horrible, wonderful? Because they're open. He's the only person I've ever come across that will allow anyone to, who's a real soul, a pneumatic soul, who really wants to discuss the big picture, to have an open discussion. Why can't that be a regular thing? Well, because he knows it would be a threat to the Matrix, to Babylon. Because in these open discussions, we get a glimpse, we get a taste, we get hours of seeing into the potential of what humans can think up. And as Yeshua said, when two or more are gathered in my name, I'm there. When two or more are gathered in the name Joshua S. John, it doesn't necessarily have to be about how we're stuck in hell or how we can self-exit. It could be about how we can actualize our potential, how we can remember and regain our powers, how we can actually dust off the truth and live within it, how we can grow our wings back to learn lucid dreaming or remote viewing, to become the true creative powerhouse that a pneumatic soul really is. Because again, as these are in most cases, unless you're one of those extremely lucky, brilliant peacemakers that can bridge the world back into capitalism while it still exists and make money off it, you know, it's often mutually exclusive. Because if we are our real, true essences in these flesh suits, we're not milkable goyim. We're not fodder. We're not in a psychological prison. We're not going to be going to a FEMA or ICE facility. We're not going to be used for our anguish. I mean, fighting invisible inner me's is not the end of this species. It's not our destiny. The fatal fate of the unexamined mind does not have to be your end. But you're going to have to do that inner work. You're going to have to face the monster pretending to be you. You might have to let go of the self-depreciation, the harmful and masochistic habits that attract and draw the imposter back in. Because the shame, blame, the fear, and the guilt that comes along with it. Every self-destructive habit has a way of bringing the Archon back in. You might have to look up at the sky above the walls. You might have to see that the fake you, the emperor, has no clothes other than lies. The truth is far bigger than the perceptual prison that builds dogma I used to load the truck for a woman that claimed to be a born-again Christian and in a work trade, and I'd say the word magic, she'd flip out. It triggered her. Why this word? Because a born-again Christian, a Bible thumper, a Jew, a Muslim, someone who follows the scientism death cult, or even the cult of money, who's under a black magic spell. And it freaked her out when I'd say the word magic because, I mean, in a way, she is one of those brilliant people that is able to live their dream in capitalism. But even though that's the case, it triggered her because the Archon pushes her around in her thoughts every day. And that's why when I stupidly send her videos and messages, she never responds, because the insane property tax she pays in California, or actually I think she rents her land, the insane rents are a great way to keep even someone that brilliant from ever looking at why this incessant and perpetual anxiety will never ever leave. Because this anxiety that's unnecessary is the fuel that keeps the prison work farm going. The creative potential within you is vast. And thanks, Jeremy, whose channel is called The Real People, for making a little talk about this yesterday to bring it up. And the channel, The Prison Called Life, is talking about how, in his video yesterday, how we enjoy suffering and misery, and how we don't want our problems solved, because I would say we identify with the false self so much that we love misery and suffering. And you can see this is a problem in the red pill or the black pill, the hardcore truther community, loving to whine and complain and talk about how this is a hell, but not focus in on creative solutions, creative escape routes. Because that's going to get you a lot more views. Misery loves company. The algorithm will support that. But it will never popularize the Kismet spiral as long as Anika ends the videos with talking like this about the truth of the divine magic within, as well as the brutal, horrific truth. Because in facing this, in facing the horrors and the wonders, and approaching the brilliant creatorship within this thing while you're here even, you can see the potential for your freedom arising. You can chart an escape route like Andy in the Shawshank Redemption. You can dig that hole behind that poster of Sophia Loren. There is that slim possibility that you can regain the true benevolent magic of who you are. A little bit or a lot, here and now. Not through spiritual bypassing, not through embracing bullshit, not through becoming more narcissistic or psychopathic, not through patting yourself on the back and saying, I'm a great hero. Through humbly and respectfully doing that shadow work. Acknowledging and respecting the true Christ, Sophia, the wisdom goddess, working within you with true respect for the true divinity, which never asks you to merge, to surrender to the source, to the reptilian, to the oneness vacuum, to the oneness quicksand of the demiurge, to concede, to give up, but honors your sovereignty, the immense power of your individuality and creativity that truly gives you every moment that you're fully or mostly fully open-minded or really willing to accept the beauty, the potential to grow and flower in your actual essence. Think about how many limitations you will have without a body. Let's say even if you escape the wheel of samsara and get out, all those things you can't do without a physical body, you'd better do them now. Unless you somehow miraculously know how to create or get a body somewhere else. Because maybe you won't be able to do those things. This is something they never talk about in the hell realm soul trap community. I'm going to tell you. Now is the only moment that's 100% real. So whether you've got to go pay that rent or that mortgage, or you have a few moments or hours or afternoon or the day off, or you have a horrific illness and you seem to have days, weeks, or months or years to explore, to heal, why not do it now? Why not step into your potential in this moment? Accept the truth that you're more than a battery for the fallen, invisible, vampiric, thief, tyrants who did such a great job of convincing millions to get on their knees and worship them as gods. And quite tragically, to be conned through black magic spells into thinking they're unconditionally loving and good when they demanded blood and demand endless war and demand endless slavery. To see through the obligation to being fallen, to being little, to being small, to being a battery for evil spirit. No. Just like how I felt after writing a decent song, you have to experience now in this flesh suit the true divinity within you. The one of the few things I learned in Sunday school as a child that will always be true. That the true Creator is within you. You must experience it now to get free. Or in this lifetime, because if you don't, in this existence, how are you going to do it when you're just an essence? Remember yourself beyond the cage as a beautiful, powerful, incredible, creative essence